if you're affected and you lost your job, your next step should not be finding a job. Your next step should be trying to find something that you're very interested in and try and see if there's an opportunity that you can bring those skills to bear on that.
Welcome to another episode of the peopleHum interview series. I'm your host Vanessa Rose, and let's begin with a quick introduction of peopleHum. peopleHum is an end-to-end one-view integrated human capital management automation platform, the winner of the 2019 Global Cody Award for HCM that is specifically built for crafted employee experiences and the future of work. We run the peopleHum blog and the video channel, which receives upwards of 200,000 visitors a year and publish around 2 interviews with well-known names globally every month. And now for our guest, Ron Thomas is listed amongst the 50 most talented global HR leaders in Asia by World HRD Congress. He's an international speaker, author, blogger, board member, and the managing director of Strategy Focus Group. He's a certified master human capital strategist and a strategic workforce planner. He is also cited by CIPD as one of the top 5 HR thinkers in the MENA region. Welcome, Ron. We are thrilled to have you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vanessa. Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
It's our pleasure. So, Ron, we'd really like to know your story and how you came to be the MD of Strategy Focus Group.
Well, the story started in New York City. I was vice president of human resources for Martha Stewart back 2000 to probably 2009. I left there, I went to Xerox, and I managed one of their consulting practices. And I came in one day and there was an executive search email inquiring as to whether I would be interested in moving to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and competing for the role of Chief Human Resource Officer, which I did. And 8 weeks later, I was on a flight. I got the job and I flew into Riyadh from New York City. Got off the flight, it was 120 degrees. And totally different environment. And so I stayed in that role a little over a year. And I had another opportunity to move to Dubai as CEO for Great Place to Work. Mm-hmm. And that's what got me here. And that role, I was there for a little over a year. And I pulled out and started my own firm, Strategy Focus Group. So that's probably 4 years ago. So we've been in business, I think, coming up on maybe 4 years. Very exciting, human capital consulting, leadership development, and I tend to travel all over, at one time, I travel all over the globe. We have a branch office in Singapore. So my time was spent between Dubai, Hong Kong, Kuala Lumpur, Bangkok, until COVID happened, and now I'm here. So everything now has been transferred online. I worked with a group out of Switzerland yesterday for 2 days, putting them through a strategic workforce planning seminar for the entire HR department, about 26 people, that we worked with over the past 2 days. My next assignment it was supposed to be me going to London, but now that's going to be online. And post-London, I was supposed to be headed to New York for a session there. So we don't really know how those other 2 are going to turn out, whether it's going to be virtual or whether it will be facilitating with a group of people in-house. And that's where it is today.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You worked across all the big brand names, across so many roles. And I'm sure it was a very exciting journey.
Yes, still exciting.
Yeah. So, Ron, what are your views on shaping a purpose-led culture within an organization to attract and retain talent?
COVID has brought purpose to the forefront. COVID has brought empathy to the forefront. People want to work for an organization that stands for something. Every organization offers a check and benefits. So what is your value beyond that? I was reading stories during this period of how companies have stepped up to the plate. Volunteering, Louis Vuitton started making masks. I know that may not sound like a lot, but that's a commitment you're showing to your employees that we're all in this together. ills of the world. There was a gentleman, Stanley Fink, who is the chairman CEO of BlackRock, which is the largest investment firm in the world. And every year he writes a letter to all of his investors. And he wrote a letter maybe 3-4 years ago. And that letter centered on the fact that we have to stop being driven by P&L. We should start being driven by P&L plus purpose. And when he wrote that maybe 2-3 years ago, whatever the time frame was, a lot of people became a little upset because they said we have shareholders and all these other things, and we'll take care of that, but it's all about the P&L. It's all about the shareholder connection. He was kind of a canary in the mine, because what happened is that's coming to the forefront now. There's a statement from the gentleman Richard Branson that says, you know, he takes care of his people, and his people will take care of the customers. A CEO friend of mine here in Abu Dhabi, CEO from a hospital, and he said his management style always was driven by take care of the people who take care of the people. That's a different environment. And in a lot of cultures, that's a mind shift. I did some work out of Saudi Arabia some time back, and one of the discussions came up on the call, and the CEO was concerned about people working from home. And he says, I want them back in the office as soon as everything's lifted. I'm not going to pay for anyone to watch Netflix. And I just could not believe such a statement could come out like that. And my follow-up to that was, why did you choose Netflix? Why would you assume someone is watching Netflix? Have you been notified of anyone not meeting their productivity KPIs? He said no, but he was still kind of skeptical. The question mark was still there. That mindset permeates a lot of organizations today from leaders. And so when you talk about purpose, your employees are home, stressed out, working the same as you are. You've been locked down for a period of time. But you want to believe that your company cares for you during this period. And that's where the empathy piece comes up from leaders. Understanding that everyone is stressed out. And imagine if you were on a call with an all hands on call, and your CEO was to allude to a statement like that, and you knew that you were up till 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night working, your productivity never dropped. In a lot of cases, productivity increases, because if it took you an hour to get to work and an hour to get home, work-life balance is somewhat taken care of, and you're more productive. So I think the learning from leadership, or the learning from an organization, we have to care for our people more. And in order to get them back into the sync of however it turns out, we have to show a caring attitude. Our workplace policies, procedures, all of that is going to have to change and be looked at through the lens of people and purpose.
Yeah, there's still this barrier of trust that needs to be broken down.
Yeah, the value of trust. If I don't trust my people, if I don't see you in front of me, I'm assuming you're not working. That's a fixed mindset. That's an old mindset. A growth mindset says, work from anywhere. Mm-hmm. So it went from all hands on. It went to working from home. And now the discussion is coming up, work from anywhere. So if I was hired in Dubai and I needed to move back to New York, I could still operate the same as we're operating here. And maybe you fly in 1, 2, 3 times, whatever it is. That's going to be the new normal. Now, that's going to be a transition, because some organizations are going to have to feel comfortable in allowing people to work from home and get out of the mindset that says, I don't trust you unless I see you, and move to the mindset that says, I trust you. You're an adult. I hired you as an adult. So here's what we need to do. If you need anything, you let me know. Now, here's what some countries have done to kind of tap into that. In certain countries, you may not have the bandwidth. Your internet is probably spotty. It was like that in Dubai too. That first week, everyone's internet was slow. And I was talking to a friend of mine at the telecom, and he said, imagine if your usage every day was maybe 500,000, and then all of a sudden, over a weekend, it jumps to 200,000. Over the same cables and everything. He said, we're trying to max it out. We will get it fixed. But this is what we faced when everything went into lockdown. And they had never given consideration, to that. So this trust factor is going to have to be dealt with. A friend of mine is the CEO for the one I was talking about for the hospital. And he said what he's noticed leaders without portfolio. He's noticed leaders with portfolio. Some leaders are afraid to make a decision. They're hedging. Some people with no portfolio just stepped up to the plate and took over and started doing things. He said, I've got to bind to this stick because I've been taking notes every day. And I'm going to turn those notes into a developmental tool for my leaders. And we're going to have to maybe rethink a lot of people that were in roles. And we're going to have to rethink the capabilities of the leaders that we're going to need post-COVID. So you may have come into the COVID experience as a leader. You were designated as a leader. You didn't do well with a lot of ambiguity. You didn't do well in managing a virtual team. That's a skill set I'm going to need to enhance. All managers are going to have to enhance that skill set. How do you manage a virtual team? It's not like you're calling a team meeting and everyone's sitting in the room and you're having a conversation. Body language, you can see eye movement, all these kinds of things. Here, it's totally different. I could have my video off. And I could say, well, my band, this is an example. I said, well, my bandwidth is low. If I put the video on, I'm going to lose it. So I'm going to turn my video off. How do you manage that process? So there's two things that's going to have to happen. A new leader is going to have to be developed or enhanced. And the organization is going to have to pull back and analyze and start reimagining the new workforce. What is that going to look like? So that means all those policy manuals and procedures, you had everything stepped up, get away and rethink work. It's going to have to be done.
We'll definitely have to rethink and retrain leaders now. But how do you think leaders can embrace risk to create opportunities now?
Well, first of all, the key point to that is self-awareness. Mm-hmm. Self-awareness says, I'm not doing well with this virtual stuff, and I need help. But see, that's the conundrum because a lot of the same leaders feel that they have the leadership mantle bestowed upon them, and they would never admit to themselves that they need help. The first point to that is admitting, I need help. It's okay to say, I don't know, but we can figure it out together. Let's you and I work together. What do you need from me? Team members, what do you need from me? I'm trying to figure this out the same as you're trying to figure it out. We're all in this together. I want to make sure you're taken care of, but I need your help. I may not be the leader that I want to be, and I'm examining that now. So can you help me be better? You know what? If you told your team that, everyone would step up to the plate. Everyone would come in kind of a mini coaching session, and we coach each other, and we build that trust, and we rise as a group. But the people that are in charge, sometimes there's that blockage, and there's a term called imposter syndrome that says, I'm here and I was promoted into leader. I'm not doing well, but I have to pretend I'm doing well because I don't want anyone to find out. Well, you know what? It's coming to cleansing time now, and it's best for you to admit it up front and start working on trying to become better at what you do, as opposed to being hard-headed, fixed mindset, and keep heading into the storm, because sooner or later, it's going to all hit.
Yeah, that's so true. Everyone's struggling now, and leaders are no exception.
Yes. Yeah. And they need to admit that. There's nothing wrong with admitting that I'm having a tough time with this. So if I'm managing a team and my team member is calling me, and my role now is listening, and they're telling me that I'm really struggling with this, I would not be, a leader should not be afraid to admit, I'm struggling too. Here's what I'm struggling with. How can we help each other? I'm struggling because I want to make sure you're okay. You're struggling because of challenges you're having maybe in your workspace, or your space that you're working in is not conducive, could be technical problems. It could be overworked. I'm working more now. How can we help each other? And then you form partnerships around members, and you just continually keep building on that. You keep having these listening sessions. We're not going to do work today. We're just going to listen to each other. So let's just think about what's working, what's not working, and what could we do to improve it. We're going to go around the room and get a little taste from everybody. And we're going to kind of throw it into the pot and try and come up with a workable solution for this team. It may not work for another team, but for this team, it possibly could work. And that's the easiest way to analyze any problem before you get into methods and models. What's working, what's not working, and what can we do to improve it? It doesn't take a PhD to respond to those.
A very basic but really important question.
Exactly.
Also, how important do you think is it for employees to upskill, especially now in a very fast-moving environment?
So the same as I talked about leaders upskilling, I give an example. I worked with a senior level HR department out of Switzerland the last few days. And I told them, I said, here in human resources, what we do, we're discussing upskilling, but it's looked at for them. And for this person on the line, if we're going to put in this new robot, we got to upskill. And I said, look in the mirror. The person you see in the mirror also needs to be upskilled. I need to be upskilled. I'm spending time reading every day. I'm marking up things. I'm creating slides. If I need to talk to someone concerning something, give a speech or whatever it is, I'm upskilling. Leaders and CEOs are upskilling. Everybody has to upskill. So it's not just the workers. But sometimes in the context of an organization, we talk about upskilling. It's talking about maybe because of digitization. It could be because of AI and all these things, and the audience that's going to impact. Well, you know what? The entire organization is going to have to upskill, starting from the top all the way down. We talked about leadership development and what they're going to have to brush up on, and that cascades throughout the organization. If you're managing people, you need to be upskilled. This is a new normal now. I don't want to use the word normal because it hasn't gotten back to, we can't even define normal, but we're going to have to, throughout the entire organization, we're going to have to think about how we're going to upskill the entire structure. Now, some audience may be impacted more so than others. So there was a famous, I don't want to say case study, Amazon was experimenting with robots. And the audience that was going to be impacted, audience analysis is a marketing term, but I use it in human resources all the time. The audience that was going to be impacted were the people who were picking the orders, and the job title was pickers. They had like 135,000 of these people. And what was going to have to happen is that if they put these robots in, they were going to have to upskill these people in working with robots and creating new jobs. They didn't lay anybody off because it was such a cost savings of bringing those robots in. So they started upskilling, and they just announced maybe 2 quarters ago, they set aside, I think it was $700 million to upskill their entire workforce. Now, I know Amazon gets a lot of bad press in a lot of areas. I thought that was magnificent because they took the cost savings and then invested it back into the employees throughout, not just a certain segment. Oh, it's always for them. Well, it's for me too. So we all have to kind of get on that upskilling train and think about what we can do better.
It's a very interesting example. The world is changing and we got to keep up with it.
Yes. And some things are prevalent. I mean, some things kind of pop right to the surface. So here's another example. GE Healthcare digitized their entire HR function. So whereas you may have gone to human resource to get an address change or ask a question or all these things, they digitized all of it. So what did they do for HR? They sent them out and developed them to become strategic, the real strategic HR leaders. In other words, how do you solve problems of the organization or the function you're sitting in? You're not going to be doing process anymore. That was one way to look at it, and that was a positive light. Now, I had a discussion with a potential client in talking through this digitization process, and the first thing came on his mind was that it's a huge cost saving because now I can basically lay off the entire HR department. How did that even get into the equation? We haven't even talked this through, and right away you're hell-bent fixed on laying that segment of the workforce. What if we could upskill that segment and turn them loose inside of the organization? Think about the value, business outcome that would bring. And we kept going back and forth, I haven't heard from him. So I think that my vision was not aligning to his vision, and it was best that he moved on because I really don't want to work with someone stuck in a time period that was long ago.
Yeah. So, Ron, do you have any other sound bites that you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, I put it this way. You know, a lot of people, there's not a day that goes by that there's a request, someone asking me, please help me find a job because I'm out of work. And so what I would say to that, if you're affected and you lost your job, your next step should not be finding a job. Your next step should be trying to find something that you're very interested in and try and see if there's an opportunity you can bring those skills to bear on that. And then it becomes, it kind of moves away from being a job, and you're taking your passion and skills, putting all that together, and then you enjoy doing what you're doing. The companies are not going to start hiring for some time. And we have to be creative. When this thing started, this thing being COVID started, I had just come back from Bangkok. I was in Bangkok for maybe almost a little less than a week. And I flew back into Dubai. I had a full calendar of work back in Singapore, Hong Kong, Kuala Lumpur. I was coming back here, then I was going to fly back out again. I get back here, airport's closed. All my clients put everything on hold. And I'm sitting like, what do I do now? So there's no facilitation, no flying in, going into people's offices. So I had to rethink, upskill my business. And part of that was understanding everything I could about using all of the technology and trying to redo my work. But I find I enjoy the technological aspect when it works fine. And it creates kind of new opportunities. So I was able to pivot, or the buzzword is agile, and moved into something else. And things are still going on a little slow, but they're still moving on. So impacted, you are affected the same way millions of people are across the globe. And whether it's volunteering, you have to do something to keep your mind focused, because sitting around, woe is me, being depressed is not going to help. And I know that's easy to say. It's really not going to help, because there's millions and millions of people across the globe. Go back through your list. Go back to LinkedIn to see who you know. And if you know people on LinkedIn, just engage in a conversation. Don't connect with someone and then the next minute you send a letter giving them the whole layout of what you're dealing with. People like that probably get 5 or 6 of those a day. Someone said, I request that you help me get a job. I'm like, whoa, thank you very much. Request. We have to refocus is what I'm saying. We have to all refocus. Organizations are refocusing. Managers are refocusing. Workers are refocusing. People lost their jobs are refocusing. We're all in a refocusing stage and trying to reimagine what it's going to look like in the future.
That's a wonderful advice, Ron. Yeah, this is not the end. This is just a pause, and we got to make the most of it.
Yes, got to make the most of it in some way.
So, I really appreciate you sharing your time and your views with us, Ron. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you.